Happy Wednesday and happy special Wednesday to everybody in the US. We are pre-Turkey Day, pre-Thanksgiving here. So if you're in the US, my thoughts are with you. Actually, write in if you're cooking. I'm doing a couple sides, but I did let it slip that we bought a pre-made turkey. I know. I'm not brave enough to even try that. I just have like nightmares of the kitchen catching on fire and then us ordering Domino's pizza, which maybe isn't the worst thing for Thanksgiving, but the thought of it just scares me. So it sounds like Jen's brave enough to cook and some other of you are, but I'm just not there yet. But I'm really excited. I feel like this is such a time to be thankful and reflect, and holy moly, in 1 week, it's going to be December. I don't know about you guys, but December 1st, how did we get here? It has been so fast. Whoa, we're already upon us. And I don't know about you, but I'm starting to think about the dreaded New Year's resolutions and New Year and new vision and all that sort of good stuff. And so as I've thought about who do I want to show up as in 2021 and how do I want to show up in this new year, I was, the universe kind of conspires for you. I was going through LinkedIn learning courses and adding a few to my saved list. And I watched one, and then I watched it one time full the way through. And then I actually watched it. I'm halfway through the second go around because I kind of felt like the first one was marinating in there. And now the second one, I'm actually writing notes. And I was so captivated by this instructor, Alex. I felt like she was speaking to me. I mean, thousands of people watched the course, but I was like, no, she's talking to me specifically. And her course was all about how to show up authentically, how to show up in your own voice and your own power. And I was just like, as I think about the next year in 2021, like, this is what we all need. We all need to show up as our best selves, as our most authentic selves. So I was super nervous to reach out to her and be like, can you come to coffee with us? But lucky for me and you, she said yes. So I'm so excited, and I hope you will help me in welcoming Alex to coffee with us.
Hi.
Hi. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining. Like I said, I loved your course. I'm sure you get this all the time, but I loved your course, and I feel like we're already friends because I've watched your course. You don't know me, but I know you.
We can be friends, Kim.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Well, welcome. So excited to have you here with us. And again, for anybody that doesn't know, how would you describe yourself and what you do? Because I have to point out one thing I loved that you have in your LinkedIn bio is you have a day personality, and then you have like a by night, which I thought was so cool.
I do. So by day, I help people grow their presence on LinkedIn and help them tell their story, as well as helping them find a sense of purpose in what it is that they do. By night, I blog under the hashtag Authentic Alex on LinkedIn, and have been doing so for the last almost 5 years, around things that can be or stigmatized. So things around mental health and adversity and courage and authenticity. And that's pretty much me in a nutshell.
I love it. And I'm so curious because I felt like the minute I read that sentence, I was like, boom, I get it. I get her. It's witty. It's fun. It's playful. Like, is that something that you just it came naturally and it popped in your brain? Or did you sit down saying, I really want to write something that when people read it, it sort of has like a tongue in cheek, like the superhero Clark Kent vibe?
It was very much intentional. Nothing I do is accidental. I wanted people to feel something when they go on my profile, because there's very little profiles on LinkedIn that you read that make you feel something, and feeling something makes you memorable. So it's very tongue-in-cheek. There's a little bit of humor in it. And very often when people connect with me, they mention things that are in my summary. And it's a point of, it's a conversation starter. and people get a flavor of what I'm like already in my writing. So, you know, especially if there's people that are interested in looking for someone to coach them, they can already sense whether they'll enjoy that tone or not. And the way I write is really how I am in person. So I think for me, that's really important about being intentional of how you show up and share your story in the summary section.
We're getting an inside view in your brain. We're like transported in there. Okay, let's say that myself and maybe Kelly and Chris and some other people that joined are like, yes, we love this superhero idea, like love the by day, the by night, but we're not maybe as creative as you, because I'm sure some of this comes naturally to you. It seems like, you know, maybe something you were kind of born with. How would we even start to get like a touch of Alex knowledge in us?
I would ask yourself, so a really good sentence to answer, which might give you an insight of what can go in there, is if you know me, you'd know. And you finish that sentence and it's like, what do people not know of you? Like, what do you not necessarily share that is something that's quite unique and personal to you? And I always love asking that question. And, you know, maybe some people that are watching live can answer it. But it's always interesting because two things happen. People are like, oh, I didn't know that about you. One, if you're sharing it with someone that you know, and two, it's always something quite unusual and unique. And it's, again, the beginning of a conversation starter. So that's always a great sentence to make you think, okay, like what's something that I can inject a bit more of who I am and my personality into my profile?
Well, and I feel like it probably also makes you relatable, like to Eric's, you know, echoing of, oh, you know, you root for that sports team too, or, you know, you're a coach as well. And I guess for me, I'll talk for myself, and, you know, Kelly and Jen, maybe you guys can chime in too, but I think what I struggle with is it's really hard on LinkedIn to know, you know, do you stay very corporate? You know, like how it's kind of the same thing when like LinkedIn stories came out versus Instagram stories. I kind of feel like in Instagram stories, I can be a little more like, here's what I ate for breakfast and whatever. And there's something about LinkedIn stories that I'm like, well, I have to be a little more like, this is work. I can't bring too much fun. Or is there a separation, or do you think that there's a separation there?
There is, but much more smaller than people think there is. I think, especially if you are a business owner, there is no real excuse to kind of hide or not share it. You know, I get that some people are wanting to show up in a certain way for their target audience, but for me, this works really well. Like, I work with very well-known big brands and they hire me because I show up in that way. And they're attracted to this slight kind of playfulness and humor and a little bit kind of fun, and it works for me. I always say to my clients, there's a spectrum, right, of how personal and professional. And I sit very much on the personal side of things. That's not to say all my clients do. And it's finding a happy medium of where you're comfortable with how much you want to share and how playful and different. And because at the end of the day, what I'm getting people to do is to stand out. And in order to do that, it's not acting the same way that everyone is on LinkedIn. And if everyone's acting professionally and if everyone's acting very corporate, how are you like meant to stand out to all of that kind of noise? So like I said, when people look at my profile, they're like, wow, this is really different. And I do it in that way on purpose because there's not a lot of that. And so it really kind of stands out. So I'm a massive advocate of bringing the personal to LinkedIn, because at the end of the day, we're humans and it's not work and life, it's life. And inevitably, both of those things influence each other. So it's really about how can I bring my authentic self to my presence, to my online presence? Because by doing so, you attract people with similar values and similar interests. And that's really kind of what you want to be doing.
Well, I'm curious too. I mean, with some of these big brands that you're working with or individual clients or people that you're coaching, what's like the biggest roadblock that you face that people are just like, Alex, I cannot get past X? Like, what is that?
Judged. So the fear of being judged is the biggest roadblock for people. Like, what are people going to think? What if I say the wrong thing? What if I damage my reputation? And often, you know, this is our fight, flight, freeze response kicking in of like, let me protect you because there's a threat if I show up and XYZ happens. And that's natural. I mean, it happened when I started, it happens with all of my clients. But once they start to really kind of show up and share who they are, and they see the response and the engagement and the connection that it's creating and the trust that it's building, they're like, oh, this is one, this is safe. And two, this is really where you get that true engagement, where you get a lot of people interested in what you do and who you are, is when you do that. So I would definitely say that is the number one thing. And I coach everything from like students all the way to CEOs of companies that turn over millions. And it's always the same thing.
It's always that judgment fact. I mean, I guess, yeah, it makes sense. Like at the end of the day, we're all still back in middle school being like, does anyone want to sit with us? Like, please like me.
Yeah. I mean,
yeah, we all have a little bit of that.
Exactly. And I definitely think that LinkedIn does sometimes feel like a school playground.
Totally. I mean, when you have someone's like, okay, I get it. You know, I get it, Alex, you're right. You know, I need to start being a little more authentic. I need to start sharing more. What's like your version of the shallow end? Maybe not like the cannonball into the deep end, but what's like your shallow end of the pool? Is it start with your LinkedIn profile? Is it something as simple as start with, you know, your banner on LinkedIn, or is it go straight to a post? Like, what's the gateway drug that you recommend when people start thinking about authenticity?
For like absolute starting, because I'm freaking out about doing anything, would just be to comment on people's content. I know someone, her name is Lila Smith. She's really well known as a content creator on LinkedIn, but she started off building her brand just off the back of commenting on other people's content, because it allows people to see a glimpse into who you are and how you think. Just as you were saying, we're getting a snapshot of how your mind works. That's what happens when you comment on people's content. If you do it intentionally and not like oh, yes, I agree. Like if it's a well thought out comment to that piece of content. So I would definitely say that that's kind of the beginning and start of that for those that are kind of freaking out. And if they're not looking to look at their profile just yet. And I would say the opposite end of that is sharing a story like of your life. You know, why did you get into what you do? What is something that you've overcome? So things like that. I mean, if you look at your feed and you see any of these sort of like viral posts on LinkedIn, it always, always, always is a personal story.
And some of the viral ones, I don't know about you, but I like sort of hate them because it's something like, I lost my job and like 5 mortgages later. And then you're like, but wait a minute, what? Like, huh? And so some of it, I feel like the ones that I really love is that there's some sort of learning from it. Like I love to learn some sort of nugget.
So I designed a course called the Story Marketing course around helping people tell their story. And when I teach that course, I always say to people, I don't create content for the sake of visibility or virality or just for the sake of creating content. You do it with an intention and you have a message at the end of each piece of content that you're creating. Maybe the story is the message itself and it will naturally come to the reader without having to be explicit of what that message or lesson is. But there always has to be some form of learning or lesson in there. Because if not, it's kind of like, what are you trying to achieve with that? Right? So I definitely agree with you. Is 100% always have some form of learning or value that you're adding to the person that's reading it.
Well, and I love your point of like, it has to be intentional. Like there has to be like, you know, Simon Sinek start with why. Like there has to be a why behind what you're posting. And I'm curious for everybody else, you know, when it comes to being, sharing your story or being a little more vulnerable, like what is stopping you from doing that? Because I think for me, what kind of stops me is two things. One, I have found COVID, I can share for some reason much better in person. I don't know if it's like the energy or whatever. Like sometimes when it's a screen and I'm alone, I'm like, oh, who am I sharing with? I don't know. So like that's been hard, the sort of COVID digital angle. The being judged, definitely what you said. And then I think for me in a leadership position, you know, owning my own company, it's a little bit like you don't want to show other people that the leader, you know, is weak or is stressed or doesn't know what she's doing. And so how, if you are leading a team or you are in a corporate workspace, how do you share without, I don't know, kind of not freaking people out who might be working under you or for you or with you?
I mean, you already start off with the assumption that you might freak people out. So I would say you would be surprised how many people actually probably need to see their leader vulnerable right now. Because it will make them feel like, actually, you know, I'm not the only one feeling this. And it's that, you know, you can do two things. One, you can show up vulnerably, and two, you can be like, and we're going to get through this together. So you're still showing up as a leader because you're giving them direction. You're knowing that you're giving them the knowing that there is the support there and that you are helping them through this process. But you're also saying, hey, I'm also stressed or I'm also anxious, and this is, you know, there's only so much we can control, but these are the steps that we're implementing to make this, you know, as easy a process as it can be. So there is a way of doing both. And I think that especially in leadership, we still have a long way to go with this idea around vulnerability being weakness. And actually that we have to show up as a leader as this strong, have my shit together all the time. You know, actually what people sometimes need, especially in a time like this, is, you know, a leader that is and can be vulnerable.
Well, and I definitely think during this time, like for me, everything's gone haywire. And what I mean by that is I used to be like very organized and like, okay, this is what I'm doing this month and da-da-da, and like strategy and whatever. And to the point, Jeff brought it up, like planning LinkedIn posts. I could be like, okay, here's what I'm going to do. Da-da. But how do you like, are you still really organized? Do you have your content calendar figured out? I know you're launching 2 courses coming up, so I have to believe that you're somewhat organized there. But how have you been during COVID and just maybe in general with your own planning?
I'm not much of a planner.
Okay.
COVID or no COVID.
That makes me feel better.
Yeah, I don't plan any of my content. If I'm planning content, it's usually because it's, you know, a piece of influencer marketing that needs to be planned out. And I'm in partnership with a business who pays me for that content. If not, no, it's not planned out. My own content is very, I would say, it's a very intuitive process. Like, what do I feel like writing about today? And if I don't, then I don't write anything. And I would rather not write than put something out for the sake of being consistent and visible. So I don't really plan stuff out. I mean, the most I have planned out is I have a newsletter on LinkedIn called From Trauma to Triumph that I have come out every Friday. And I have a list of topics that I want to speak about, or like blog titles. And that's it. That is as much planning as I have. A brain dump of a few ideas of things I want to talk about. Not even an outline, just the title.
You know what? That's sometimes all you need. Like, yeah, that's fine. I mean, but you do, you know, you have the newsletter you're writing every Friday. You also, you know, I sort of mentioned it, but you have 2 courses, you have your LinkedIn course, but these are different types of courses. December 2nd, you're launching sort of a walkthrough with you, and that's leaning on the Artist Way, which I don't know if anybody out there has done Artist Way, but we can talk about that. And then January 14th, you mentioned the story marketing. Can you kind of give us the inside scoop on what these programs are and what inspired you to start them?
Yeah. So The Artist Way, I'm going to be co-facilitating with a friend of mine who I also run some leadership development programs with. And she is also an artist and is a photographer, but she also is a coach and facilitator. And both of us are very arty. And I recently moved or relocated to Berlin because from London. I used to be based in London and I'm a born and bred Londoner. But I felt like I wanted to engage with my creative side more. Pardon. And so for me, I was like, okay, what are ways that I can engage my creative side more? And the Artist Way is something that I've known and heard of for many, many years. And I tend to do better when I'm accountable and when I'm with a group and doing that learning process. And so Tracy and I thought, why don't we run a program and we open it up for people that also want to go on this 12-week journey with us around engaging with our creative side. And it's a mixture of, if anyone knows the Artist Way, where you do your morning pages, where you come up with ideas to take yourself on an artist date, and other kind of activities that we're going to be facilitating around that engagement of the creative side of ourselves to help foster like innovation and problem solving and that sort of thing. And then the story marketing course in January is all about how do I tell my story on LinkedIn in a way that doesn't feel scary and in a way that still remains professional, but is a lot more personable, in a way that, you know, I can learn how to structure stories and content in the right way that gives that kind of intentional message at the end. And also do it in a safe environment with other people whereby I can really show up vulnerably and authentically and then figure out, okay, what's comfortable for me to share and what's not comfortable for me to share. And I go through sort of storytelling techniques, and there's a lot of writing, and it's very creative, but also very business oriented as well.
And are these programs that you've run before, or these are brand new out of the box?
So the Artist Way is brand new out of the box. First time we're going to be running it. And the story marketing is something that I started about 3 or 4 months ago. So I'm now on my 3rd cohort.
Amazing. So, okay. So from the outside looking in, it seems like you're doing a lot. I mean, I don't know, but it seems like you're coaching people by day. You have this thing running in December, this thing running in January. Like, how are you doing it all? Like, do you have secret elves behind you? Do you have a whole team? Do you have an assistant? Like, how are you doing all of this?
No, it's just me. I am a one-woman band. This is going to sound strange, given that it sounds like I'm very busy, but I also spend a lot of time looking after myself. So a lot of time in nature, a lot of time with self-care, and you know, taking time out, and you know, really understanding when are the periods that I'm most productive and how do I work best. So I'm not a morning person. I will start working by like 11 a.m. and I will finish working quite late, and that's fine for me because my brain sort of wakes up a lot in the evening more than in the morning. And I take a lot of breaks during the day when I need to, and I make sure that I engage in things that I love so it doesn't feel like work.
I mean, it's kind of amazing because I feel like, holy moly, like to still have time to take care of yourself and do everything you're doing. I feel like most people, at least it sounds like, do you have sort of a routine? I know some people call it like the magic hour, and they wake up at, 9 a.m. and the first 2 hours are blocked off for like meditation and exercise. And I mean, do you have a sort of routine that you consistently follow?
Yeah, a little bit. I wouldn't say it's super structured or very routine because I hate routines. But I will wake up and yeah, I have a very slow process to start my day because like I said, I'm not a morning person. But I guess I do. Yeah. I mean, I have a normal routine like most people. I don't think it's any different.
Well, I just ask because I feel like, some people are like, I swear by the fact that I like get up at 5 a.m. and
I'm definitely
meditate for 90 minutes or something. And I'm always like, yeah, I'll put that on the to-do list. And then
No, I'm not one of those people. No, I don't resonate with that at all.
I have a lot of things that I'm like, I'm definitely going to do that. And then, you know, it doesn't actually happen. But I mean, are you going to do any sort of 2021 New Year's resolutions or like new year, new things you're going to focus on? I know you kind of mentioned moving to Berlin and really kind of getting in touch with your creative side. Sounds like that was a 2019 sort of 2020 thing. Do you have anything for 2021 that you're like, I definitely want to dive into this?
Yes. So my blog or my newsletter on LinkedIn called From Trauma to Triumph is in the process of turning into a website that is going to be focused on mental health advocacy. So it's going to, I'm going to be launching a podcast in the new year around how do I, you know, that journey of going from trauma to triumph around to explain that newsletter was done off the back of going to therapy in December and documenting what I was learning in that process. And things that I learned about myself and topics that are quite hard to talk about. And I am going to be interviewing kind of psychologists and therapists around those different topics to make that information as accessible as possible. And I'm also going to have people sending in stories about their mental health challenges, whether with their name or anonymously, so that people can read not just my story from my newsletter, but other people's stories too. So there'll definitely be more of a focus on the mental health advocacy that I've been wanting to kind of get into a little bit more in the new year.
Is it something that you, I mean, obviously you just told us, so we're like, you know, friend DA instead of an NDA, because we're all friends here. But do you usually tell people your goals? I always wonder, like, do I tell people my goals and then they hold me accountable? Or do I just kind of keep like my goals and wishes for myself?
It depends. So it depends how big the goal is. So moving to Berlin has been something that's been on my mind for over 10 years. But no one knew until I announced it, like absolutely no one. And so that came a bit like what? You've moved to like a different country? And I think from the outside, it probably looked quite impulsive. But actually it'd been something that I'd been on my mind for a while. But actually making the decision to move, like thinking about it again and making the decision to move and being like, okay, this is the right time, all happened in the space of 6 weeks. So yeah, I think it really depends. So something like, you know, my business is transitioning slowly but surely. But that's a kind of, I would say maybe like a 2-3 year plan, maybe 5. I'm not telling people where it's going yet. I'm slowly moving it in that direction. And this Trauma to Triumph website and blog is part of that process. So there's a bigger goal behind that. But yeah, it kind of depends how big a goal or how soon a goal it is.
Well, and it sounds like, I'm curious of maybe some other people can chime in. Hi, Scott. You do have both of us in here. I'm curious, you know, for anybody who would be willing to share, who would like to share, you know, when it comes to 2021 goals and resolutions, like, what are you thinking about? Have you set them? Will you set them? Because I think something that I will volunteer for everyone. And the reason I was so excited to talk to you is I think what I would love to see in 2021, we've all gone through COVID. We're all kind of in this together in this global community of like, let's be a little more authentic. You know, let's say that this has been hard, or I need help, or the kids are at home and I feel like they're going crazy and I'm supposed to be on this conference call, you know, like being a little more real, I guess. I would love to see some more realness.
And I think it's the perfect time for people to feel comfortable to do that, because there's so much of it right now. There's a lot of people that feel like they can be like that because a lot more people are being like that. Because, you know, some might not even have the choice that the kids are running behind in the Zoom conference call. So I think that if there was ever a time to want to show up more authentically and vulnerably, it's now more than ever.
Well, and it's now more than ever. And I think for me, and I don't know about you, but I have this client, I will not name names, they'll remain nameless, But I have this client, and this was like 3 weeks ago, and they called out of the blue, and I answered the phone, you know, hi, whatever. And he started to say like, things have never been better. Like, meanwhile, he works in the music industry, which newsflash is not doing that well right now. But it was like, things have never been better. Like, we're going to have our strongest. And I remember getting off the phone being like, okay, he's either colossally like lying, basically, or I'm a huge failure, because I'll be the first one to say like, this is definitely not going to be our best year, like by a long shot, definitely not great. And so long story short, I heard down the grapevine by somebody that works in the office that like he was completely putting on a front, but it sort of left a bad taste in my mouth. I don't know if you've ever had that happen, but I was like, whoa.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny. I think there's definitely an element, and this goes back to kind of the vulnerability piece, right? And the being authentic is, some people will not want to show that the shit's hit the fan and that business isn't great and it's not doing well, because they're going to want to show, they're going to think, well, what if we, say that things aren't bad? Are we going to lose even more clients or not get even more or less business? And I think that that's something that will probably hold a lot of people back, because actually what would happen if you did say, actually, business isn't good and I kind of need help? And people right now are very willing to help or support in any way that they can, because everyone can feel that it's not a usual situation and that we're all sort of kind of struggling together. And if anything, that's probably going to do more damage than good, especially if people find out that you weren't being real and authentic.
No. Oh, 100%, 100%. I'd love, and Jen, it sounds like you're ready to start speaking authentically. I love that. Figuring out where to go. You're right. I think that industry, do you do a lot of speaking gigs, Alex?
I do. Yeah, I do. And, the beginning of March, everything got kind of wiped off. I think with any kind of keynote speaker, we all saw the same thing happen, of everything either completely being cancelled or put on pause. And then came the influx of like, okay, we're now doing virtual events. And some of those clients decided to completely cancel and not go virtual. And some of those clients decided to transition into virtual. And luckily for me, I mean, a big part of moving to Berlin is knowing that I have the option to do a lot of my work virtual now, which wasn't the case as much before COVID. So there is a silver lining. And for me, that worked out well. And I would definitely say that there are opportunities as a speaker out there right now, because I'm getting them. So there has to be more. So if that is a goal, then that is totally a doable goal.
And is that something that you go out there and try to get, or these are all inbound coming to you? Or do you
don't do any outbound marketing at all for speaking or for coaching or anything else. It all comes to me through LinkedIn.
Which again, to bring it full circle, if you are putting out that storytelling and you are representing yourself and what you do and who you are really well, then it does kind of all then come back. It's one big circle.
Exactly. And what I would say to anyone that wants to get into speaking around that is, if you want to be a speaker, put that somewhere on your profile, because the amount of speakers want to be speakers that I coach, and they're like, yeah, I'd love to do more speaking, or I'd love to get into speaking. And I'm like, where is it in your profile? Oh, I didn't think about putting it on there. I'm like, but if someone's looking for a speaker and you could be creating great content, but they come to your profile and it's nowhere to be seen. Like, how would someone know that they can book you as a speaker? And it's so simple as a tip. And yet I see it day in, day out.
I mean, it sounds like that's an easy one. That's a kind of a layup. Everyone should be in there editing their profile tonight with like, here's some things I want to be doing. I feel like that's a no-brainer. What is I feel like you're the type that really likes to dig in with clients. I don't know why, it feels like you kind of like to dig in with them. What's your vision of like your most ideal client that you're just like over there like, mwah, ha, ha, like I cannot wait to like dig into you?
I think people that work with people. So what I mean by that is any people that are people that are coaches or leadership development or anything like that, because they tend to be quite open to learning and they're quite open to digging deep more than anyone else in different roles. I think that those are kind of, for me, like the most fun to work with. Especially that I know that the work that I will do in helping them spread their message around kind of upskilling and growing professionally and personally will impact more people. So my work feels a bit like I help this one person, but I know this person, once I help them grow their visibility and their presence and their voice, will send out a message to an even larger audience. So I always love those kind of clients because I know that my impact goes beyond the person I'm working with.
And like stretches into the ether of everybody that they touch.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think people that really want to be bold, I love. So I recently worked with a chartered psychologist who I had actually worked with twice. And her name is Michelle Minikin. And I worked with her on her profile maybe a year ago. And then she got in touch again because she went through a rebrand and she started off a new business called Work Pirates. And the branding was
I saw you post about her. Yeah. So fun.
And it was very bold. It was very different. And, chartered psychologists have a certain way of showing up. And she was like, I don't want to do that. I want to be really different, really bold, really out there. And if you look at her headline all the way through the branding to the summary, there's a lot of kind of sass, and she's definitely not hiding. And that are those types of clients as well are my favorite, that they're like, let's go all out, let's show up super authentically and super bold and stand out. And that's when, you get results because you look different and sound different. And some people will gravitate towards that. And those that are not, resonating with that messaging and branding will go elsewhere.
But that was like the biggest piece of advice I heard this year, was that you actually want people to be repelled from you because you want your ideal people closer, and you want to be like, by the way, her banner is that big pirate flag is freaking awesome. So yeah, the minute somebody clicks, you want somebody to either be like, yes, I'm leaning in, this is my person, or immediately being like, no, next I'm going to go look for someone else. Like, you actually want people to kind of either lean in or lead out quickly.
Yeah, exactly. Because what's the point of work, as a business owner, you want to be working with people that you get along with, because you've got to spend time with them and you've got to get to know them and you've got to support them. So if you don't resonate and they don't resonate with you, then it's not really going to work. And so that's why, she uses certain language that will definitely not resonate with people, and yet it will resonate quite strongly with others.
No, 100. And I'm curious, besides obviously your own newsletter, and it sounds like the podcast that's going to be launching, what are some other really authentic voices that you surround yourself with? So newsletters that you're regularly reading, or podcasts that you're regularly listening to? Because I think it helps you to be more authentic when you're surrounded by other people who are authentic.
Yeah, I mean, one that I've always been massively influenced and inspired by, who I absolutely love, is Michaela Alexis, who is also a LinkedIn Learning instructor and a LinkedIn coach. I have always loved her content because it's less about, even though it's similar to me, we both do the same thing for a living. But what I love is that her content isn't really about LinkedIn. It's about her life and what she goes through. And she's written about things like fertility and grief and loss. And, I've definitely been inspired by a lot of her content from quite a long time now. Call her a friend now. But I absolutely love what she does, because I think people seem to think that in order to succeed, you have to create content that's to do with what you do for a living. And if Michaela and me are anything to go by, that's really not the case, because neither of us create that much content on, LinkedIn. She does that through her company page. I almost don't do it at all. But I think that I'm attracted more to people that create content that's less on the kind of businessy expert stuff, but more on the kind of personal life stuff that is more an interest to me.
Well, and I'm more of, I love, and I say it all the time, like copying people's homework. Like, I want to know what worked for them. Like, if you tell me that you're doing something that works for you, I'm like, oh, I'll give it a try. Like, she's doing it and it worked pretty great. Like, I love sort of other people as like guinea pigs almost. Like, oh, well, you try it. Did that work? Okay, then I'll try it.
I always say to my clients, try and find people that are doing what you want to do or that do what you do, and look and study like what works for them, what doesn't work for them. And then, but more importantly than anything, do your own version. Like, it can be influenced and inspired by someone else, but it's really like you have to do your own thing, because then it's just copying, and that's a no-no. And, Michaela's a good example of like, I was definitely inspired by her content. And my tone of voice, etc., and the kind of content that I shared was like, okay, well, if she's showing up really vulnerably, then surely there's an audience for that. And for a long time, I think there wasn't that many of us that were showing up in that way until it became kind of cool to share that type of content on LinkedIn.
Then you became the cool kids. It was like a role reversal that happened. No, I love it. Okay, well, here's the part, because I'm almost done with my caffeine. Here's the part where I'm going to copy off your homework. And by I mean everybody here is going to copy off your homework. And this is the like speed question where we're all going to get our little pens and write down, we're going to copy your homework, which is what have you started using lately or doing lately that you love? Could be like an app or a practice or whatever that you're like, I'm obsessed with this.
Creative writing. Yeah. So what I mean by that is just, and I guess some people call it journaling, but just sitting down and writing. And it could be writing what you're thinking, what you're feeling, what's happened in the day, just writing down your thoughts. I once a week sit down with a friend who I met in a creative writing course, and we pick a random theme. And sometimes we come to the session, or like, it's not a formal session, it's just us sitting together and writing. And I'm like, I'm just so frustrated. I've had a really shitty day. And we're like, let's just write about frustration. And then we just sit and write for like, 10 minutes. And then we read our writing to each other. So for me, writing has been a really big practice of doing it not for work purposes, because I started blogging on LinkedIn for fun, and then it kind of became more work related. So it's really important for me to find time to do it in a non-working way. Like
a more fun way.
Yeah, exactly.
Fun, but it's work. Personal work.
Very cathartic. That's why I'm advising it.
Right. Cathartic work. Okay. This is a 2-part question, but the first part is, what would you do differently if you were just starting out? So if you could like get in a little time machine and go back to like beginning Alex, what would you do differently?
I would have been a lot more consistent with my content from the get-go.
Like, consistency is key.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then if you could go back in a time machine, the second part of the question, and just start from 2020, you can't erase COVID because we would all do that. But if you could go back and like say, I wish I would have done X like more recently, what would that be?
I wish I would have hired a coach sooner for myself.
Yeah. Interesting.
I only started working with her about a month ago, and it's my first coach since I started my business about 3.5 years ago. And I wish I would have hired one sooner, now that I know how much it's accelerating my process, which is hilarious given that I am a coach myself. So yeah, I definitely advise getting a coach.
Interesting. Okay, then that might be the answer to this next question, but I will still ask it anyways, which is, what's the best gift that you've given yourself or done in the past year? Sounds like Coach might be it, but if there's another one.
No. Freedom. Yeah. It's the move to Berlin and finding a lot more freedom than I had previously.
I mean, that's a big one.
Yeah.
And it's a true gift. It's the gift that keeps on giving.
Exactly.
What is the next thing that you're hoping to learn, that you're really excited to learn about?
This is going really left field. But I recently signed up just today, actually, there's two things I've recently signed up. One is a little bit more obvious and the other one less so. I signed up to do a Reiki, a practitioner's course. So healing and energy work, which is something that I've been kind of thinking about doing for quite some time, and just thought, why don't we do that? And the second one is I just signed up also today, actually, funny enough, to become a mental health first aid person. So I'm going to be going in a course in January because I do a lot of kind of keynote talks on mental health, but I felt a bit like I needed some more information around some of the stuff that I talk about. And just being able to kind of answer some questions that people might ask after in a much more, I don't know how to explain it, but yeah, just having some more tools in the mental health toolkit, especially that I write a lot about it and that I'm going to start this podcast, etc. So just kind of feeling like I was needing to upskill a little bit more in that area.
I have never tried Reiki, but I've heard about it. So maybe that's something that I'll have to try.
If you're ever in Berlin.
If I'm ever in Berlin, I know where I'm coming for the Reiki. I love it. Okay. And that might be a good one. Segue to, we love homework assignments. So what is one thing that you think that all of us who are here today should try this week? It could be like a TV show, could be like signing up for a newsletter, your newsletter. Like, what should we all do this week that you're like, this is a must?
I mean, just because you said it, I'm totally gonna steal it. Yeah, check out the From Trauma to Triumph blog. It's not businessy at all, but it's really kind of a place where I share a lot of kind of learnings about life and things that I'm experiencing and feeling, and from what I've seen from a lot of the comments and people that I'm up to about almost 24,000 subscribers in this space of a few months. It's resonated with a lot of people that feel like they're also healing in the process of me healing. So not LinkedIn related, but it seems to be going down well. So if anyone's interested in that, then check it out.
I love that.
And if anything, it might inspire someone to show up more authentically and vulnerably.
We're here for it. We're here for it. We're ready. We're like, yes. No, this sounds amazing. Well, Alex, thank you for joining us. Where can people stay in touch with you? Where do you spend the most time? How can people keep learning from you?
You can connect with me on LinkedIn, and it's /AuthenticAlex. I'm on Instagram as well, where it's a little bit more behind the scenes, and that's @I'mAuthenticAlex. And those are pretty much the two places. The website for traumatotriumph.co will probably launch in the next few weeks.
So exciting. Well, I feel like I have so much Googling to do. I'm so excited that you were able to join us. And like I said, I know Eric said that he's going to take the class. Like I said, I already went through it once. I'm now on my second go around, the encore, if you will. So I can attest that you should definitely give it a look. But I just wanted to thank you again, Alex, for joining us and imparting so much wisdom on us. Thank you.
Thanks for having me, and thanks for inviting me, Kim.
I love it. Well, cheers, everybody in the US. Have an amazing, wonderful Thanksgiving tomorrow. I'm thankful for all of you, and we'll see you next Wednesday.
Bye.
See ya.